And now, Classic Tracks with Ed Wallace.
There was a common misperception about how a song became a hit record. Most believed that a record company that had a great belief in a great record would take it to local program directors at radio stations. They would play the song for them, and if the PD liked it, he would allow that song to be put into rotation at his radio station. If that song was a hit in one city, then other program directors nationally would see that in Billboard magazine and add the song to their station's rotation. In time, if enough stations liked it, it spread across the country, and you had the hit record we all remember. And that system worked well for decades. But by the 70s, as record labels consolidated and the independent record company almost ceased to exist, the major record labels started hiring independent record promoters to push their songs on radio stations. It surprises some to realize this system was starting even in the early 70s. After all, when the Beatles broke up, who would have thought that John Lennon and Paul McCartney would fight over which independent record promoter would handle their next 45 in America? Now, you would think that if a program director was handed either Paul or John's next 45 and he liked it, his station would play it because of their fame. But it didn't work that way by the early 70s. Paul would accuse John of getting more airplay because he'd gotten a better record promoter, or John would accuse Paul of the same thing. By the late 70s, record labels were paying tens of millions of dollars a year to a consolidated group of record promoters. And if they didn't pay, their label's artists and their songs would not be heard on any radio station. CBS Records decided they would be the first to show just how insidious this new system was, and that it had nothing to do with playing the best records or the most popular groups on radio. Basically, because these new record promoters were tied to the mob. And if you didn't pay for their protection racket in the guise of record promotion, no radio station would touch your records.
We don't need no thought control.
CBS decided to prove their point with Pink Floyd's The Wall. They would pay record promoters to push that song in major markets in America, just not in Los Angeles. They would see what would happen. Meaning, would LA radio stations play an undeniable hit record that was sweeping the nation if they didn't pay the promoter? After all, in February of 1980, Pink Floyd tickets went on sale for their series of concerts at the LA Sports Arena. 5 shows sold out almost immediately. And on March 22nd, 1980, Pink Floyd's The Wall moved into the #1 spot on the charts, and it would stay there for 4 weeks. And The Wall was a top 10 song for almost 5 months. But in Los Angeles, not one radio station was playing that song, in spite of the fact it was a huge hit nationally, and everyone knew it. The Wall was not being played in L.A. because CBS Records refused to pay a promoter to push it on L.A. radio stations. Now, typically, Pink Floyd and their manager could not care less about their songs being heard on Top 40 radio. But when they got to Los Angeles to do those concerts, they couldn't help but notice no station was playing their music. So CBS executives were asked why. they did not tell them the truth, that they were using Pink Floyd as an experiment on the mob's new lock on what got played on air. Instead, that afternoon, they quietly hired the record promoter that handled Los Angeles, and the very next day, you guessed it, Pink Floyd's The Wall was playing on every major radio station in L.A. It was that quick. Independent record promoters really came into their own in the early 70s. But at a summit in New York in 1978, the biggest ones in the business formed what they called the network. And if you didn't do business with them, your record label could have all of the best artists and all of the best hit records, but no one in America would ever hear them. By 1982, 60 Minutes was working on a story about this new form of payola. In the end, they did not do it. Some believe because CBS owned 60 Minutes and a major record label. It was left to NBC News to run the story on record promotion and corruption in 1986. Rudolph Giuliani, then a U.S. attorney, convened a federal grand jury, and he subpoenaed documents from all of the record labels about their dealings with these so-called record promoters. Yeah, that did it. Within weeks, all of America's major record companies banned the use of these independent record promoters. And the music business became a bit more pure again. Ironically, just as rock and roll went to hell.
Shake your love, I just can't shake your love. Shake your love, I just can't shake your love.